No, it's
Because what we could do is go ahead and just, we could clip that onto itself, and we could use that as a handheld for us. And they could use it for that. That big handheld. Look at that.
Okay, we'll start with prayer.
So what I'm suggesting is why don't we just clip it to itself?
Okay.
And that way we have a handheld. Just right on top of this. There you go. And now you have a handheld.
okay.
Handle it that way.
Good evening. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord Jesus, you've told us that where 2 or 3 are gathered together in your name, you would be there in the midst of them. And so we welcome your divine presence among us, those gathered here in this holy place, and those who are gathered with us through live streaming. Lord, bless Ross and his wife in their presentation to us. Bless those of us who are gathered here and those who are watching from afar. Stir up your spirit in our hearts that our minds may be enlightened and our souls renewed. Bless this evening of coming together and entering more deeply into the great mystery of your love and gracious care for us. We offer you our prayer in gratitude and praise. You who live with the Father in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Monsignor. And welcome to the parishioners who are here and any visitors that we have tonight, and also to anyone joining us on our live stream. We have this speaker series about once a quarter where we get people, professionals and different people to come in and talk about different topics. And a few months ago, somebody mentioned to me that Valentine's Day is right around the corner, as Monsignor has been so good to remind these husbands among us. Although it falls on Ash Wednesday this year, so we're supposed to celebrate Tuesday or Thursday. But anyway, somebody said, why don't we get somebody to speak about marriage? And immediately I thought of Ross Githens, because his father was one of my husband's fraternity brothers years ago and remains one of our very good friends. And I knew that Ross has a thriving counseling practice over on Line Avenue with the Clint Davis Group. I think that he works with a wide variety of clients, but certainly has a lot of expertise in the field of marriage and family therapy. So when I called, he was anxious to do this. He's done this at several other churches recently in town. And so I am just thrilled that he wanted to come tonight, and he said, I don't want to talk for an hour or an hour and a half. I want this to be like an interactive conversation. So I'm glad that you who are here tonight feel free at the end of this or even during this. Raise your hand if you have a question or a comment. And we also have a panel of Armand and Virginia Canales, who are going to be our seasoned married couple, okay? And then we have Courtney and Trey Dean, who are going to be our relatively newlyweds, okay? How many years? Going up on 10 years, okay. And, you know, even if you are not married, thinking about getting married, have already been married, you know, whatever, I just feel like anybody listening tonight or anybody that's here tonight, I know we're going to go away with some insights and some really wonderful information from Ross. So this is Ross's wife, Jennifer, and this is Ross. So I'm just going to turn it over to them, and if y'all want to take your seats up here and on the hot seats, we will get started. Okay.
All right, welcome everybody. I guess that y'all can hear me? Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I'm so glad to be here, so glad to help, and I hope that we can have a good format here of laughter and talking about marriage and what I think that mistakes and some of the pitfalls, some of the things that the good and the bad and things we need to look for in marriage. Me and Jennifer have been married about 22 years, so we're not seasoned, but we're not brand new, right? So I think that's the fun of doing this together, is we all have something to learn here from the young and from the old. And so I think that's I wanted to do a little background on me and my wife. We met, I went to Evangeline for high school following drug rehab. That's kind of how I came to faith, is I realized that I had an addiction. And so I went to get treatment for that. I met a counselor, and it really changed my life and kind of opened the doors that I could, wow, this is a great job where you actually help people and you get to meet with them and help them. And then I came back and finished high school and made some really good friends. And I went to college, at Louisiana College, got my bachelor's degree in psychology. And I realized that I was falling in love with my best friend's sister, which is really awkward. So that's who my wife is my best friend. I would bring my girlfriend that I was dating in college home, and Jennifer was just so wonderful to entertain her. And then one summer, everything changed, and we've been together since '99. So as my baby would say, since the 19s, or the late 1900s, he likes to say, just to tease us. So, yes, we've been married 22 years. We have boys that are 17 and 15, and we're glad to be here tonight and help you guys. So I don't know if one of you wants to start, if we just y'all want to take turns asking questions, because I think you have a list of questions as well, and maybe we could just do one for each. Does that sound good? Oh, yeah, you want to introduce yourselves?
Okay.
You can do it.
Yeah.
You can introduce us.
So Trey and Courtney Dean, we've been married for coming up on 10 years in July.
Veterans.
Yeah. Anytime somebody asks us how long we've been married, she just kind of turns
Yeah.
for the test question,
That's right.
right? See if I can
Double
answer
digits.
it appropriately.
That's right.
And 10 is the easy one, right? It's
It
the
is.
other ones where I'm having.
Yeah,
Hold on.
math.
So she is a school teacher by trade at C.E. Bird High School. I'm an accountant at Automated Payroll Systems. And yeah,
We met here at this church.
yeah,
That's great.
for sure. And youth group.
That's neat.
Introduce yourselves.
Yeah, we're one of those, I like to call it a success story. And we actually met, it was a blind date. Somebody thought we were good for each other, introduced us, and just over the phone. And after a few phone conversations, we decided to finally meet. And then the rest is history. And it worked. You know, it worked. And so we've been married for 25 years now. We're going to be,
5 years
next month, we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary. We're looking forward to that. And I really like to call it a success story.
It is.
Would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, we have between the two of us, we have 5 kids, 11 grandkids, and 3 great-grandkids.
Wow.
So it's working out.
Yes, our newest addition just came to us on January the 31st.
Wow.
So this family is growing, and we hope maybe we can get to see the next generation.
I hope so.
There we go.
I'll go first. Yeah, so one of the questions we wanted to ask, as a young couple, how do you navigate picking friends to keep in your friend group who are going to be supportive of your marriage? So what qualities should you look for when you're building your friend group?
Yeah, great question. I think some of them we looked for was, what are friends that support our faith, that support our marriage? Obviously, I'm not mad at my single friends. I don't want to avoid them, but they were often running and doing things and going to the gym at 11 o'clock at night, for example. And I find when you get married, you don't really come home to a happy woman if you left at 11 p.m. So I think that we need friends that support us, that encourage us, that even if I were to share or vent or confess like what I'm going through, that even if I said something that didn't make my wife sound good, that he would not take my side or bash her. And that's what I look for, is I want someone who's willing to point out the selfish, the sin, the iniquity in me, because I want to learn how to be challenged and receive correction. I think that's a really core feature to marriage. You want to say anything? Okay, good question.
You go ahead.
Your turn.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're okay.
Technology.
Okay. So, one thing that that we could that we thought was a good question to kick off would be, how often do you pray with your spouse outside of meals, and kind of how do you navigate carving out time for that in order to stay kind of centered around Christ?
Yeah, so when we study intimacy, we believe there's 4 types of intimacy, ready? Mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And so I find when a couple is working on all of the intimacies, I ask the couple to work on one every day. And so to answer your question, I know couples that pray every day. I know couples that get up and have coffee together. I know couples that meet at 9 or 10 p.m. because they love staying up late. They're both night owls. So I don't know if there's a magic answer. I don't know if there's a 3 recipe, that you need to do this X amount of time. We have found that some of the best prayer we've had has centered around comes out of our personal time or stuff that we're struggling with. And so something that we'll try to work on is what we call like a pillow time, is that we wanted to focus on a connection of 5 minutes minimum every day. Whether that be prayer, confiding, sharing weaknesses, struggles, celebrations. Because, to have intimacy is to be intentional, right? You have to make effort, make time for it. And I think any couple here that will tell you that as you start out as this cute little couple in this honeymoon, it's so fun to laugh and date, and all the things are almost easy. And I think what happens is life takes over, jobs take over, children, all these things that are less important than my marriage somehow creep up the list to become the most important. And so I don't want ever my kids' sports or my kid band activities or all these things in my life to trump my marriage. So we've just tried to come back to that and always say our marriage needs to be the most important, because my marriage is a permanent assignment, right? My children are a temporary assignment. Yes, I'll be a father the rest of my life, but I don't want to ever put them before my spouse, because then I'm actually worshiping. I'm actually putting something that's not where God wants it above my spouse, which will grieve. You'll find a lot of jealousy in relationships when this happens. You think you want to add? Great question.
May I make a comment
Please.
related to that before I do my question? We have a little prayer book on our table, and every morning after we eat breakfast, we read a little prayer. It has all the days of the year from January the 1st
Right.
to December 31st. So we read each day the prayer for that day. And it's usually just a little meditation, it just gives a little story and a little brief comment from the Bible. And it just encourages you to talk about different themes and different things that happen in life,
That's good.
And it has been great for us. We have been doing that for years and years and years, and it just opens so many topics to talk about. And we usually have just a simple breakfast and then just read that prayer. And we have talked about so many topics just by reading that little prayer every single day.
That's good. It's a great idea.
I vouch for that.
Okay, my question to you. How do we allow personal space in our togetherness, both inside the home and outside the home?
And so remember, personal space will be defined by things that make you uncomfortable. So some of us have abuse history, some of us have personal preferences, and I think that's part of my goal in my life is to know my wife and to be known by my wife. And so I think this is part of how we learn things that upset each other. So for example, I heard a story of a woman who wanted just quiet mornings. That's all she asked for, was just to have quiet mornings. And so the husband would go over there and turn up the TV just loud enough where he could hear it. And he was trying to be real respectful. But I think it was invading sometimes the loud noise or the ruckus of the TV really disturbed her morning. And I know couples that, for example, she'll take a bath every night, and so they'll shut the bathroom door and shut the bedroom door, and that's kind of a cue to the family that mom is off the clock. And so if any questions that we normally go to mom with need to go to dad. And I think that's sometimes training the family. Or even in couples, like we need to sometimes educate. I remember a time that my wife was walking around the neighborhood and she invited me to come, and I said, I would love to go walking with you, but I want to make sure you don't want that time alone. Because there are times that we do need to take care of ourselves, be alone, pray, process, allow things to go through our body, through our mind, work things out. Because, I find couples make a lot of mistakes when they strike, when they say things wrong in raw emotion. And they really need to pray through and realize what is the core, what's the heart behind the offense. Because I remember having toddlers and being jealous of them or being resentful at them because I felt like my wife had energy for them. My wife had all this extra for them. And I probably had to go mow the yard and calm down to realize I'm jealous, I'm lonely. And then once I was able to calm down, I didn't say anything I regretted. I just said, hey, I would like to go on a date. I miss you. And so that was a great moment for us, for her to say, gosh, I miss you too. I think we do need to go on a date. It's embarrassing that it's been this many weeks, that we just accidentally can start ignoring each other. But a great question. I think personal space is very important because I see couples that enmesh, right? They're too close, they smother. The analogy I like to use is if you hug someone so tight they can't breathe, we don't usually call that kindness, right? So we want to be sensitive that we are loving, attentive, but we're not invading. We're not pressing too hard. And then, of course, the opposite is abandonment, stonewalling. We don't want us to ignore each other. It is, I find, one of the cruelest things you can do to a woman is just ignore her, just not even look at her, respond to her, socially ostracize her. I think that is going to be recipe for war.
It's important, I think, for the newlyweds or the ones that are planning to get married, that we cannot read each other's mind.
That's good.
I mean, we have to communicate that. I mean, if you need your personal space, you got to express it to the other person.
That's good.
I mean, because sometimes we just get mad, I mean, I want to be quiet, and he keeps on talking to me, I mean, you've got to tell them. You got to
That's good.
listen. I need this quiet time for myself, because if you don't say it out loud, how can he understand what I need? So it's important to talk.
That's good.
I remember whenever we were doing our marriage prep with Father Phil prior to getting married. I'm sorry, Father Pike. Father Phil was the priest here at the time, but we were doing it through Father Pike. Even though there were specific topics that were covered, the root of all of those were communication. So I just to
Very good.
piggyback off of your
Very good.
thought, it's kind of the root of everything.
It is.
We often hear that there should be no secrets in a marriage, but it's human nature to try to protect our privacy in certain areas. So is it really necessary to be an open book in a marriage?
And so the short answer is yes. It is necessary to be an open book. Is there secrets? Is there private things? Are there things that maybe aren't ready to be shared? Yes. I think that you're allowed space. But in my opinion, space, privacy, long term, I think can lead to divorce. Because what's happening is I hear stories of people will go get cash and they'll start buying lunch at places they don't want their wife to know about, or they'll have an account because they don't want anyone to hold them accountable, or they'll turn their phone off because they don't want to know where they're standing. And so, yes, once again, I want to back up. I want you to have personal space. I want you to have boundaries. I want you to take care of each other with respect. This is not permission to be weird or a creeper, right? This is normal functioning. But when I hear the word privacy, what I hear sometimes is people wanting to have independence in a relationship of intimacy. And I think if we go back to the Garden of Eden, right, Adam and Eve, in their sin, right, created distance, created, by eating the fruit, divided themselves from the Father. And so we all have that drive, I agree with you, to want to be independent, to want to have privacy, to not want to be accountable or answer to anyone. And I think that I need to be honest, that I need to almost look at my selfishness and say, why am I protecting this? So yes, if I bought something for my wife for Christmas, right, that is something that I would keep private for a surprise, right? But it's not malicious, it's not deceitful or secretive in nature. You follow me? And so that's a complicated yes/no question. I know it is.
It is. Sometimes you hear your spouse say something like, "Oh, you're so predictable." And then it makes you feel like maybe you want to be not so predictable,
Right.
you know. But like you said, it's a balance. And the question she brought about personal time, and then this other thing about open book kind of thing. So somehow there is a little bit of a relation between one topic and the other.
Right.
And-
Because if we go back to those four intimacies, right, I want to share my mind, I want to share my heart, I want to share my spirit, and I want to share my body. That to me is the four intimacies of marriage. And I think that we find that mental connection and physical connection are what we would call the masculine connections, because they really come easy for most of the fellas. But when it comes to emotional connecting and spiritual connecting, those are really difficult for a lot of fellas because we don't feel strong, we don't feel powerful, we feel vulnerable. And if you study women, you'll find that women love vulnerability. Yes, they want to protect her, but give her a baby, give her a puppy. You will watch a woman come alive. They will instinctually protect it, and they are drawn to it. So, yes, there are fellas that will make fun of other men for crying in front of their wives, but that woman is not making fun of that man. If she's honest, she loves that he trusts her. He's confiding in her. He is stepping into her because he is sharing something that's embarrassing about anxiety or a nightmare or stress at work, things that don't make him look good. But if they're best friends, they are choosing intimacy. They are choosing to invest in each other. And these are awkward conversations. These are not easy. Once again, intimacy is never comfortable. I joke that if it's comfortable, it's not intimacy, right? There has to be some exposure to it. Now, is there education? I mean, obviously, I have to be very careful that I don't just randomly say these things are very private and personal to me. So I think there's some education, like you said earlier, let's not read each other's minds. So I need to be honest and say, hey, can we talk? I'm upset, I'm going through this. And that cues her to respond sensitively and not make a joke or seem to dismiss it.
Yeah, I have experienced that when there is an opportunity, a situation that calls for a little bit more of openness, in the end, after that, it seems that invariably it brings, as a result, a little bit more of closeness.
That's it.
And that's really,
That's it.
I think it's really good.
You've invested in her. That's right. You trusted her. It's good.
Talking about that same topic that he's saying, there are some things that I think that helps a lot in a marriage. For example, it's not that he's being secretive or that I'm being secretive, but for example, I really appreciate that he doesn't, if he needs something from me, from my purse, he doesn't go digging in my purse. He asks me permission.
That's good.
Can I go look for this? And
good.
say, it's in my purse, just go look for it. He says, I don't like digging in your purse, you
That's
know?
good.
But I tell him, just go do it. I mean, I don't have any secrets in
That's
there,
good.
you know?
I
But
love
he
it.
asks me permission.
That's
Same
respect.
thing with the mail. You know, if
That's good.
something comes in his name, I don't dare open it. I mean, the mail is for him, so he opens it. And he tells me, you can go ahead and open it. But I said, no, it came in your name, so you open it.
That's good.
You know, those are just little details that show respect for each other.
That's good.
And I think that respect is so important in a marriage. You know, if you lose respect for each other, the marriage goes downhill from
It
there
does.
on.
You're right.
So,
It's very good.
So another fun fact about the both of us is we're both the oldest of 6 kids, and so we are kind of used to both being leaders. And so on this journey to heaven together, sometimes we have flaws that we both have to work on. So how do you give that feedback, and then also how do you receive that feedback?
So what we find is with oldest, they are leaders. They are sometimes stubborn leaders. And so they trust themselves, right? I'm a better driver, said every oldest, right? And so you'll find that there is some opinions there that I don't know if I want to die on that hill, right? I don't know if necessarily one of you, I mean, I hear you're a CPA, but does that really mean you're better with money or that you deserve to control every dollar? You follow me? And so I think that's where I think submit one to another is what the Bible's going to tell us, is that I respect, I honor her, that yes, I have opinions, yes, I want to work together, I want to compromise, but I think it's, once again, checking my selfishness of saying, I don't necessarily always do it better, and I think God has put us together to be smarter together, to parent together, to do our finances, to dream together. These things, we are better together. And so I'm very cautious with couples that say, well, I'm smarter than her, or I'm better with X than her. And there may be gifting. I'm not saying, for example, she's a math teacher. I'm not going to trump her mathematics, but we need to have respect again of each other and show that we don't need to dominate. We don't need to win every battle and then lose the war. But with birth orders, a fascinating thing. You know, we find with the oldest, they're very dominant, very great leaders. We joke that oldest sometimes don't have really good hearing because they're so busy leading, right?
Yep.
I wasn't listening because you shouldn't complain because you should trust me, right? And so if you're leading no one, you're really not a good leader. So I think a good leader turns their heart, turns their body toward who they're trying to lead. And when we studied Jesus, he was good in attunement, right? So these musical instruments behind me, they have to be tuned because a quality musician cannot play these instruments if they're not in tune. So my marriage is something I need to pull into and check with. And if there are times that she's cold or she's distant or she seems angry, sometimes that's not about me. Sometimes that's our attunement of learning to turn into each other. A middle child, we'll say, is called the forgotten child because they're in a family of three, a family of multiples, right? And they're good peacemakers, but they can also be instigators. And so I think that's something that's fascinating with that birth order. A youngest child, we call them baby for life, is that they typically get attention by being a baby. You can probably recall some of your siblings that are a little fussy or whine a little bit more than they should, but it's their primary way of getting attention. And so in a marriage, that's something we got to learn to get through, is that we don't need you to whine. We don't need you to get that much drama. We need you to calm down, get your feet to the ground, and find out why you're upset. And then we call them lonely onlys. An only child is a really difficult spouse, if I'm blunt, because they don't know how to share. They've never shared with anyone. So it's their bed, it's their bike, it's their pencil. These things naturally are theirs. And so I'll hear onlys come into marriage counseling and say, well, you know, she doesn't make up my bed. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was your bed, you know? And they'll catch themselves because they'll say, well, it's my house and it's my money. It's you hear these possessive things, and I think it really challenges them to learn how to share and learn how to not get their way, where siblings have just never had it their way. So we're kind of used to it, you know? We've never had a bike. It was always everyone's bike. You follow me?
Yeah.
But great question.
So kind of on the topic of with us both being the eldest of six and the topic of children, how do you navigate kind of these important questions that you, and I guess this would kind of more so be for prior to getting married, how do you navigate those kind of larger questions as far as like having children, discussing, you know, key financial things?
Deal breakers. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good term. Yep.
How about this? With a premarital couple, I want them talking through things that they're passionate about. Because there are things that are we can budge with, and there's other things that are like, this is actually so core and so central to me that I don't like. For example, no cat lovers here. I'm not a fan of cats. I'm sure y'all love your cats. I'm sure they're great. But that was a big deal for me. Something you came up with motorcycles. That was a big breaker for her. She worked for an insurance company, and they were burying about one motorcycle member a month due to death. And so she was thinking, I don't want my loved one to own a motorcycle. And so I think even with children, I think those are important things to negotiate. Are we going to have a large family? Are we planning to have a small family? What do we want to do? What is in the cards for that? How can we plan that together? Because I think some couples foolishly think, oh, well, they're going to change their mind. We knew a couple that he got married, and he simply said, I don't want to have children. I never want to have children. And so years later, she kept saying, well, he's going to change his mind. He's going to change his mind. He never changed his mind. And so every Mother's Day, that woman just grieved because she felt lied to. And he's saying, but I'd never lied to you. I told you from the start that my truth was I don't want to ever have children. And so they're actually misaligned. And that's grievous because, for example, we moved to Dallas. That's where I went to seminary and got my master's in counseling. But we were both passionate about coming back to Shreveport because, like it or not, this is our home. And we knew Shreveport was our home. We planned to die here. So both of our parents lived here. We loved being close to our family. That was something that was very important for us. So as wonderful as Dallas was, we were always guests. We were always visitors. Even my church back in Dallas, they would be offended because we'd say, well, we're going home this weekend. Like, home? And like, yes. Louisiana's my home. Like, we're going home. But such a vital conversation of like, and to be honest, things change. People want to change jobs. People want to do these big things in their life that affects each other. And so we had to have those adult conversations of how are we going to work together? What is the timing of that? Because I want to compromise and do things with her. Because to me, if God is telling me something and telling her something else, we are not listening to the same God. Or how about this? You're listening to the Spirit. It may not be the right Spirit. How about that?
Yeah.
But great question.
I like the point that you made about everybody kind of has those things that they weigh as more important than others, because I tend to be a lot more passive and, go with the flow. She tends to have stronger opinions about things. And so sometimes we kind of get into that rhythm, and then she kind of gets taken back whenever I am not willing to budge on something, and she's like, hold on, wait, this doesn't make any sense. This isn't how you normally are. So that's a good point.
It's good.
I would like for you to comment on what to do when you're building resentment towards your spouse over a particular point or issue.
Great question. So remember, resentment is going to be unforgiveness, okay? And so one of the features of a failed relationship is that you quit seeing your spouse as a good person or someone who's for you. And so how about this? My relationship to God is God doesn't hold resentment against me. You agree with that? Does God hold resentment towards you? Never. So if I'm to love her the way God has loved me, then I'm to forgive her the way God has forgiven me. And I think there are parables. If you'll read your Bible, there are parables of times that Jesus was commanding us to go forgive as you've been forgiven. Go give as you've been given to. And so I think there's selfishness, there's pride, there's a lot of mistakes that are being made when resentment turns into this festering wound. Because unforgiveness can be the cancer of a relationship. It will end a relationship if it's left untreated. Because it's a match of a fire, but left alone, right? What is that match capable of? Burning the entire house down. And so I think that's part of the daily renewal. His mercies are new every morning. Quote those scriptures over yourself, that you're calling yourself, you're expecting yourself to be a forgiver. Because you have been forgiven, right? The Bible says as white as snow, that your sin has been erased, right? And so if you accept that forgiveness, God is calling you to not only accept that forgiveness, but then give it. And so no one makes me madder than my children, than my wife, right? Because those intimacies are the closest, right? No one makes me happier. No one makes me more angry, right? That's very human for everyone in this room. But I think that's why God calls us to marriage, because it's a reminder of his covenant to us. Because God is not divorcing me, right? And so he expects me to turn to her and love her in that Christ-like love, that we are emptying all resentments, clearing the account, that we are going back to the beginning of a cleared balance, no debt, toward each other.
This leads me to the next question, which is related. If it's an issue that has been discussed over and over, and both parties have agreed on the solution, so the correction has been done with love between the two parties, how long you give the other spouse to resolve that conflict? If it has been discussed over and over and over, but it doesn't happen.
Well, the Bible says don't let the sun go down in your anger. So I think that's a 12-hour, right, 20-hour, depending on what time you got up this morning, right? I don't know how many people are fighting at 5 a.m., right? So let's put an expectation on ourselves that we need to be working through forgiveness. And what does forgiveness look like? Forgiveness turns into forgetfulness. Because I hear people say that, oh, I forgive, but I never forget. That is sin. That is not in the Bible. The Bible says as far as the east is from the west. And so if I betray God and I confess and I really believe I'm forgiven, right? Then Tuesday, if I bring that up, 2 days later, 3 days later, if I bring that back to God, I feel like God would be saying, I don't know what you're talking about, because I have forgotten. So how about this? Let's cover this. If there's a repeated issue like this, if there is someone who really struggles with forgiveness, that is when we recommend professional help. because there's something wrong there. There's something broken, and probably that person has had a story, a trauma, something major has happened. That's not normal. Just if I came up to you at church and patted you on your back, if you screamed, that doesn't really talk about my pat. That talks about your skin, the damage that may have been there from a sunburn, from a trauma that needs to be treated. Because you could turn to me and say you're a monster because, I just tapped you in the back and you screamed because of how much it hurt. But that shows your woundedness. That shows the betrayal that existed before you were touched. And so remember that a lot of your shortcomings, a lot of your weaknesses, a lot of your insecurities come out in marriage because that's where you're the most exposed.
In a typical family, you have the parents, you have the children, and if, let's say, we call the children the temporary assignment, and the spouse is your permanent assignment. And as a parent, you try to walk this line and keep a balance. And how do you know when you have to prioritize your temporary assignment over your permanent assignment, or vice versa?
Good question. I think that a good parent, a good mother, a good father, a good daughter, a good son, right? We have all these responsibilities we're doing. I want to be a good employee. So all these things have to take precedent and take priority. Because I love my wife, but I have to go to work Monday at 8 o'clock, right? I can't tell my job, I'm so in love with my wife that I'm no longer going to show up, right? That's a misunderstanding of the priority. If you tell me you haven't dated your wife in a month, we need to talk about your priorities. Because I don't know if you have an excuse to not spend time with someone you love. If you haven't spent time with your child in 30 days, once again, let's go back to your priorities. Because I would argue, show me your calendar, show me your wallet, and I'll tell you what you love. Because I know people who can afford $40,000 bass boats, but won't go to a soccer game, won't spend time with their children or grandchildren. And I think we're back to selfishness, is I want to make sure that I'm coming from a heart that God has loved me, God has forgiven me, and I want to spend time with these people. Do I need to give more than I can afford? Absolutely not. So I need to spend time with my friends. I need to spend time with my family. But there's a pecking order. You bet there is that God is my number one, right? He gets the best of me, the first of me, right? And then I'm going to put my spouse right underneath that, put my children right underneath that, and then the order goes down from there with my family, my work, my church. All these things come down below that. Now, are there times that I may miss something with my wife? For example, I have to say no, or we need to go out of town, or that's part of, once again, if we're compromising and working together, we are a team. And then we sacrificially, right? Sacrifice is the evidence of love, is we're sacrificially putting each other first, and we're understanding. Because there have been times that our anniversary was on a Wednesday, and let's say we went out of town on a Friday to celebrate this anniversary. We're grown adults. We've been married a minute. We can wait a day, 2 days, right? And so I see people throw these fits because you didn't have dinner with me on my birthday. And once again, we're back to selfishness. It's all about me when I'm offended. But great question.
Yep.
Temporary assignment versus permanent assignment. That's right.
Yeah, thank you. Because, this is, you have to always keep in mind you have parental responsibilities, spousal responsibilities, and navigating those two things sometimes can get tricky.
That's good. Very good.
So we work with young adults on Fridays, and I teach high schoolers by day, and technology is just a huge part of our world. I mean, we're reading our questions from our phone. We've got smartwatches on that can tell us in an instant what's going on. How do you protect your relationship from that technology kind of getting in the way and stealing quality time?
Yeah, great question. I think we've got to make sure that we don't have habits that become so instinctual. Because, I mean, how many of you have gone to a restaurant and seen a couple just sitting at the table on their devices? Mm-hmm. No intimacy, no conversation, nothing painful, nothing to talk about. They're just there playing games or typing emails or looking through social media, which I call anti-social media because it's not really social, right? You're looking at other strangers, their highlight reel, not the truth, right? They got in a fight before they took that picture at Disney. Remember that, okay? But I think there needs to be boundaries. With children, absolutely. I don't want a child to have an unprotected device. Whether that's screen time, porn filters, pornography is killing our children. And I think lazy parents are just handing these devices. And these kids are looking up stuff they cannot unsee. And then they start a relationship with these expectations, which we as adults know are fantasy. These children don't know their fantasy. And so I have couples that refuse to talk, and so they text each other laying in the same bed because they have anxiety. They have such terrible conflict resolution skills. They don't know how to navigate adult conversation. And so what our body tells us is that if it's painful, it must be wrong. Oh, no. If I go to a gym and I lose weight, my fat has died, and that was painful. Everyone has been to a gym can testify that that's what happened there, right? So if it's painful, we've got to learn how to identify that pain is sign of growth. And so if me and my wife have an awkward moment, right, we need to learn what has happened, what has gotten between us, and we need to solve that and remove that as soon as possible. Do I enjoy, we will tell stories of putting our iPads back to back, and we'll kind of hold hands, and that's kind of cute for us. Because that's right. She gets to watch her content. I get to watch my content. It's really romantic. But everyone's got to find their style, their vibe. We do watch shows together. We go on walks together. We try to have those multiple levels of intimacy. But I don't want a couple that just resides into what's easy, what doesn't cost me anything. Because what you don't invest in, you will lose. And so I want my wife to be someone that I'm friends with, that I laugh with, that I travel with. I want my boys to be envious of my marriage. How many children do I see who do not envy their parents' marriage? Because they're like, y'all hate each other. Why'd y'all get married? And then we're like, oh, that burns, because they're not happy. They don't even like each other. And so I think there's the resentment, there's the selfishness, there are these bad habits that I think people have developed over years. And I think that's where we need to go back to an apology, a turning to, a sacrifice. Let's seek pain. Let's seek some uncomfortable conversations so we can rebuild this bridge that's been deteriorating for years. Great question.
So how would you suggest as some ways to support your spouse in the midst of kind of larger things in life that maybe aren't going their way, or they're kind of in a rut, I guess you could say, like maybe with their job or something in their, maybe in your more extended family that's kind of more devastating. Not these smaller things that, you work through on a daily basis, but kind of the bigger things that can kind of leave you feeling, or your spouse feeling kind of stuck in a way.
When you talk to doctors, you'll realize they have taken an oath to help, to save, to heal, but then you'll find they're banned from working on their own family. And so as a therapist, I would love to be my wife's therapist. She does not want a therapist. She wants, that's right. She does want a therapist. It's just not me. How about that? And we've used that, and it's been wonderful. But I think part of being a man is I want to fix things, and my wife doesn't want to be fixed. I want to heal her and not take her to my healer. And so I think part of learning marriage is that there have been times that I don't have the answer. I can't fix what's hurting to her. And I can't stop it. And that feels very powerless for me. From having children, I remember toddlers falling and they're out of your reach. That's a moment I think every dad goes through. And so I think that what I've learned is that I want to sit beside my wife and be with her and realize that is some of the best healing I can ever give her. By listening to her, letting her talk, supporting her, praying with her, interceding with her, because just my company, just my gentle affection and my breathing is what I call it. I'm just here. But if you ask me, I'm really not doing anything, right? Because I didn't fix her wound. I didn't fix her situation. But I think God allows us, the ecclesia, where Ecclesiastes comes from, is that we want to collect as a body because your worship is contagious. Your hope is contagious. Your faith is contagious. So we have an isolated society right now that depression is soaring. And I have isolated couples who are purposely avoiding each other in the same house. And so they're doing the things that increase depression, and then they complain about depression. Because they're like, I drink excessive amounts of alcohol. I isolate. They're checking the list of everything we do to make depression worse. And then they'll come see a professional and say, I don't know why I'm depressed. I don't have any friends. I'm not friendly to anyone, so I have no friends. But I think that's there's a thing in a man's mind to learn how to be a friend and realize I don't have a tool belt. I can't fix her. But if I love her, if I support her, we will get through this better than we would have apart.
That is difficult to kind of come to terms with, or it has been for me, because and I think you're right. I think a lot of just men are like that,
Yeah.
where they just want to, well, this is what you have to do to fix that, and then the conversation's over, right?
Right. You have a
But
flat tire.
she
Yeah.
doesn't- yeah, like you said, she doesn't
Yeah,
want that.
that's
She
right.
just wants you to listen, and
Yeah.
she's working through it with your, emotional support.
That's right.
I guess you would say.
I wish I had a video screen. I would show you a video on the nail. Did you ever see that video?
Yep.
It's not about the nail. And so this woman has
Yep.
a nail in her forehead. And she's like, I have this headache. I have this pressure. And he's like, you have a, she's, oh, no. I knew you were going to do this. I don't want any help. I don't want any solutions. And she just kept talking about the nail, It snags on my sweater. I mean, she just goes down this list of all the things the nail did. It's just a hilarious video if you've been married more than 10 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Because it is so funny, because he's like trying to get to solution, trying to fix it, and she wants to hear it, be heard and be loved and be supported. She does not want anyone touching the nail. It's a great skit.
Well, you can tell we are the old timers. The questions are in papers. See?
Old school.
You kind of answered the question that I was going to ask you when you said that men try to solve anything. We come to them with something, and here's the answer, here's the solution. Because sometimes I tell him something, what you have to do is this and this and this. I don't want him to give me the solution. I want him to listen to me, to what I'm saying. So that was my question. How do you get them to listen, to what you really are trying to say, not to come up with the solution? I just want you to listen to what I'm saying.
And so my
I
answer
don't
to
want
that,
the solution.
my answer to that is I want a man to
That's
love a
what I
woman
say.
and not treat her like a man.
Exactly.
Because if a fella came to me and said, hey, I need help with this tire, right, I would get up. Right?
No, I still have a question.
Ask your question. Ask your question. That's good. Right.
Can you please comment again for younger couples, how to deal with finances so they don't be a point of conflict in a marriage?
Yes, finances are a big issue. We have two issues we get divorced over. That is sex and money. They are the biggest, and kids is number 3. So money is a big deal. And so I think part of tithing, part of working together financially, what kind of debt are we in? What are our habits? Are we running up credit cards that we can't afford? And so you find a spender and a saver in every marriage. And so if you don't know who the spender is, it's probably you, right? And so that'd be me. Yes, I don't appreciate you pointing. And so I think as a spender, I've got dreams, I've got fantasies, and I don't want to talk about budgets, right? And as a saver, she is gifted at managing, right, what's been brought in, and that she's going to be wired a little different, a little more conservative. And so that's part of the couple that we want you to be in. I don't find 2 savers last very long, and I don't find 2 savers get married either, because they're just not attracted to each other. I don't know why, but we find these opposing things, and then we kind of settle into these roles, because the saver doesn't want to spend, and the spender's like, you only live once, right? Let's go big, right? Let's burn down the house together, right? We'll build another one, right? And that's the irrational side of a spender. And money is a big deal because it's about control. Let's be honest. It's not about the money. Because I have had wealthy couples that fight over money. I've had poor couples fight over money. I would love to tell you, if y'all just made X, you'll no longer fight about money. Because as the only rapper I quote says, more money equals more problems, right? And so I think that's the irony of a blessing. It can become a curse if y'all don't have the skills to negotiate. What is our budget? How are we working together? There are wonderful financial tools out there right now that will track your spending, track your bills. We use a lot of them because we love technology. We love the good side of computers. And there's great teachers out there, Dave Ramsey, people that are really anti-debt, which are so, so good. But listen, I'm not saying that any of these people have it right. The Bible, right, ended perfection, right? So every teacher that follows that is going to have to struggle with their own sin, and they're going to have some nugget or some good thing for y'all to grab. But finance is a tough one, and I know a lot of couples that fight a lot about money because, she wants to swipe and pray, or he wants to swipe and pray. And who cares about the budget? Who cares about the bank account? I don't need to look at that bank account. I have faith, And the savers over there are just dying. What do you mean you didn't look at our budget? What do you mean you don't care that you went over? And we call it financial infidelity, because you're purposely wrecking or getting a credit card behind someone's back. That's what I think about when you mentioned privacy earlier. And that's what scares me, is that mistakes happen when you're not accountable.
I think it's very, very important that finances be discussed in a couple, that goals be established. These are our goals. This is where we want to get. How are we going to get there? How are we going to save for this or for that? And also that if both partners are working, that both partners contribute for the household expenses or whatever it be. You can decide how to do it, be it on a percentage basis or equally, or whichever way you want to do it. But I think it's also very, very important that each partner has some discretionary money that they can
right.
spend individually without having to give account to the other partner.
good.
I mean, women sometimes want to buy a lipstick or buy a powder or buy a perfume or a candle or whatever, and the man maybe you want to buy a tool or something that he wants to buy because he likes tools,
Right.
or whatever. I think it's very, very important that they have their own separate money that they can use without having to give accounts to the other spouse of, listen, I have to give account of every single penny that I expend. I don't think that's right. I think that you need to have your own separate money. It doesn't have to be a huge amount,
Right.
but it's important that
It
you
is.
have some money for
You're
yourself.
right.
Yeah, just like my wife puts it, if something does vroom, vroom, I want it. So, okay. My next question is for the benefit of older couples. And when the thrill of sex has diminished, let's say after 30, 40 years, could be less, could be more, should couples still make room for romance? And what's a good way to go about that?
These things you were talking about that go vroom, vroom, do they need gas?
Excuse me?
They need gas. Nah, it's just, no, really, any tool, any little thing that,
If it goes room, 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 he says, I want it.
I heard
And
And so here's, listen to my analogy, is if you found a classic car, if you found something you loved, you would take care of it, wouldn't you?
yeah,
And if you drove that classic car, how long will that car need gas?
how long will that car need gas? He's a little bit.
well, well, it's you're talking about gasoline?
Gasoline. The entire life of the car.
Well, yeah, I mean, usually, well, I try to stay away from gas.
Oh, you got it. Winner, winner. So the romance to my marriage is the gas to my car.
The
So
gas.
there is no point that a relationship doesn't need romance.
Running up there.
Because a woman wants to feel adored, she wants to feel loved, she wants to feel pursued. And any man that's voluntarily admitting that he wants to quit doing that needs to go back to the scriptures and listen to what the Lord has said, that the Lord has pursued us, right?
Yeah.
We believe that he loved us when we were unlovable. So God is not divorcing me. God is not planning to quit loving me. And so romance is the breath, is the fun. And I can brag at 22 years, we are having more fun than we've had in our entire life. So there's nothing old about an old marriage. If anything, it's sweeter. It's better. Because we have less debt, we have more income. God is blessing us beyond what we even deserve. And we are having wonderful trips. We try to travel about every 3 months, where we go alone and go to a cabin and go pray or go hike or go spend time as a couple to laugh and to be reminded of that we have chemistry. But we have chemistry on purpose because we like each other. And because we like each other, we do things that lead to love, right? Investment, intimacy, sharing, not being selfish. We accommodate each other. And so I don't care if you've been married 50 years. I don't care if you've been married 60 years. If you don't have romance, you are becoming an enemy of your spouse.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so I want two givers, I want two forgivers, right, to make intentional choices, because I do meet couples and they get tired of loving. And I get it. But I never looked at my son and said, I'm tired of loving you. I no longer want to be your father. No, these are life commitments that I've made. And so I find investment leads to attraction. And so anytime I hear someone say, oh, well, we're bored, or we don't have attraction anymore, or we've fallen out of love, that's laughable.
Yeah.
You can't find scripture that backs any of that. What that tells me is you haven't invested in them in so long, they've become your enemy. And you're strangers. And so I want couples that are friends. I want couples that are friends with chemistry, right? That they
Yep.
want to get away. They want to be intimate. They want to, what does that romance look like? Because to me, I want a couple that's taking chances and having fun. I don't want a couple that's staying in the lines and a little afraid to have fun. Because we hiked up in Pettigene in Arkansas in the ice, and it was wonderful. It was so beautiful. And the waterfalls were breathtaking. The sound of that waterfall sounded like a jet engine. But we laughed. We took pictures. We had so much fun. And I want a couple that says, we are planning to have fun our entire marriage. I don't care if we're 80 years old in wheelchairs together. We are going to have fun, because I will race her, and I will beat her. Because we're laughing, we're going to have fun, we're going to enjoy every year that God gives me in this earth.
I have learned that romance means a candlelight dinner, but it's more than that. Just a shaking of, holding hands, compliments every day, and tell you something, and she can tell you now. First thing in the morning, I see her, and she looks beautiful to me, and I tell her, and she says, "I just woke up." I said, "I don't care. You just look beautiful to me." Just first thing in the morning. And women try to, they say, "Nah, I look terrible in the morning, bad hair day, or whatever." But that's not our case. And I don't mind telling her. I have always said, for instance, when you love somebody, you have to put yourself out there, and you risk yourself being hurt.
That's right.
But that's what it takes.
That's what it takes. Very good.
Okay.
So we're both from large families, and there's lots of different personalities. So how do you handle if you don't get along with your spouse's side of the family, or they don't get along with your side of the family?
Great question. So I never want my in-laws to become outlaws, right? And so I want to be honest with you that my wife's parents will always love her more than they love me. And so I'm not an enemy of theirs, but I don't need to go to my in-laws and talk about how terrible my wife is, because that's going to make them very torn because they love her. And so I want couples to be very careful what you share with your parents, what you share with your in-laws, because there is a bias there. And my parents, as good at people as they are, they will always love me more than they love my wife, because I'm their flesh, I'm their blood. And even if I'm wrong, they may take my side. And so they're never qualified counselors, I'm sorry. Even if they are qualified counselors, they should not be your counselor. And I think that's where we want not an animosity. I want there to be a kindness. I want a man who serves his wife, who serves her parents, who serves her sisters. I want a man who says, I will love who you love. I will try to prioritize. And even if I don't like them, because some of us have in-laws we don't prefer. Is that a good way to put it? And so you just learn how to tolerate and be nice and extend grace and mercy. Even if they're not people you would pick, you still have the choice to be loving and sacrificial, because that's, once again, God through me gives me patience, mercy, and the kindness to give that grace through the years. Now, are there boundaries that are needed sometimes? Do in-laws, do my parents, can they cross some lines? Yes, we need to have adult conversations sometimes, because I think grandparents can forget their grandparents. And they'll make comments like, well, you weren't raised like that, or, I taught you better. They make these little comments, and you're like, we need to talk. Y'all did a great job, high five, you're no longer parents. These are my kids. This is our turn to screw up. I mean, raise kids, right? And so I think that's part of us working together and laughing at that this is a struggle, we're doing the best we can, but we choose to raise our kids different than we were raised, said every generation. And every generation's like, we got it right. And then our kids are going to be like, we're not doing X, right? Because every generation had something that they made priority. But how about this? If my mother-in-law aggravates me, I need to be careful how I share that, how I vent that. So I probably would run my mouth to a best friend sometimes other than running it to my wife, because yes, I want to confide in my wife, but once again, she's going to be torn if I talk about that she's annoying or, she's on my nerves. Because you can say things that are funny, but everyone knows there's that line that can be crossed where it's, that's my mom. Like, and I know she's annoying, but that's my mom, and that's where that torn position we put our spouse in.
And sometimes it's preference. Like, my sister drives him crazy. And we go on vacation with my entire family. And so Ross is known to just put in his AirPods with noise canceling.
Yes.
And then my sister's like, oh, I'm being too loud because Ross is putting on his headphones.
Because she's screaming.
Because she's screaming, because she's just a loud person. But like, that's his way of still being with the family. Like, he's still there. And it's also kind of like a cue to her to like, calm down. But it's taken us a long time to even like get that little tool that we can use. Because sometimes it's just a preference. It's not like you don't hate her. She just gets on both of our nerves.
I can kind of relate to that. We go on a beach vacation with your family every year, and her family has some bigger personalities, and so sometimes I go on the porch of the beach house and just watch the waves, and she'll hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I just need a minute, like, and then I'm gonna come back and we're gonna be all good.
I
I
love it.
like the way you put it, bigger personality.
Bigger personalities.
Absolutely.
Such a politician. That was good.
We both come from families with some big personalities, so she knows that there's nothing, no malintent there. So kind of piggybacking off of that, your comment about grandparents saying, I know I raised you better than that. How do you navigate slightly differing parenting styles between you and your spouse?
That's good. So you have a permissive parent and you'll have an authoritative parent, right? And so, shocker, I'm the strong personality. Stronger personality, would you say stronger emotions? Yeah, that's me. I'm the loud one. That's probably why my sister-in-law annoys me. And she is more permissive and more relational, and that's her gift as a teacher and, just relational with my boys. And so I think we've just tried to compromise between those two positions, because there are times they will yell at her, I will want to yell at them, and then she'll get mad at me for yelling at them. And I'm like, how do we just triangulate, And I think that, to me, we're not enemies, once again, but we're going to see things different. And so as a man, I feel like my boys are being disrespectful, and she will excuse it and say, oh, they're hungry, oh, they're tired. They weren't really yelling that loud. And I'm thinking, but I don't yell at you, right? I want them to duplicate my example, that I respect her, and I'm careful how I talk to her. And I want her to be careful how she talks to me. So I want us to combine our parenting styles and say, hey, one of us is not right, but one parent's going to say what we call scorch the earth, right? We're going to burn your Xbox, which is a little too much. That would be my camp. And then, we need to do timeout, people over here, or let's hug it out. That's going to raise criminals, right? And we're not raising criminals. But we need to have justice. We need to have, cause and effect. And we had to be very honest with our kids that, like, listen, if you punch your neighbor, if you punch your friend, if you punch your spouse, like, there are going to be cause and effect things that happen the rest of your life. So I know you're 8, but we need to talk about, like, what's coming down the road, because you're going to jail. And they're like, no way. I'm like, yes. Like, if you're 18, if you're 20, and you punch a friend, you're going to jail. That would be called simple battery. And so I'm not threatening them. I think I'm trying to prepare them for this world that doesn't have time out and these wonderful talks in the lawn that we try to do when they're little and don't have that impulse control.
And I think something we've done now that we have teenagers is that we don't give a punishment without talking to the other one. I mean, if it's not something immediate, that needs to be taken care of. But like, I love telling the story that when the boys were outside playing at like 10:30. And to give a little background, we have an 18 and a 16, and our 18-year-old is special needs. So he's developmentally delayed, so he's developmentally younger than the other. But they were outside playing football, and Ross, the next morning, because I was asleep, the next morning he was so mad about it, and he was wanting to ground them like, till they were 18 or something. It was something bad. And I was like, why? And he thought it was disrespectful to the neighbors, and I was like,
10:30 at night on a weeknight.
On a weeknight, but they don't have to go to bed till 11. And so I thought he was being absolutely ridiculous. He thought I was being absolutely ridiculous. But so we basically talk each other down. Well, I don't think they need to be grounded for 4 months, Ross, because they were outside playing, not fighting, getting along. And he was like, yes, but, you know, we talked about it. So we just had to come to an agreement. And I think that's one of when they probably got to 10 or 11, we started, you know, when they're home and, you know, they're just like, when they're toddlers, it's just a 2-minute timeout. That's not as big of a deal. But when you're talking about any length of time, I don't want to be the one, especially like on the summer, because I'm a teacher. If Ross is giving a 2-month grounding, I'm the one who's having to do it, and I don't agree with it. And so by us trying to compromise and agree on a punishment, and the boys know that now. They just know that we will come and we will agree, and then it's our punishment, and it's not your dad was being ridiculous.
I'm never ridiculous.
No.
No denial there.
On that, it's important to present a united front.
That's right.
That's what's important, you know, that you both agree on the punishment and carry it through. Yeah. This question might sound a little bit superficial and mundane, but it can cause problems in a marriage, and this is not our situation. But I do have a friend that's confronting this right now. Usually it happens to older couples. Sometimes one of the two spouses kind of changes or forgets about dressing appropriately, you know, as they get older. It tends to happen more on the male spouse than the female spouse, you know. They kind of go out to the stores and they are dressed like they're working outside in the yard. You know, and it causes a little bit of embarrassment usually for the female spouse, and you try to tell them, but they don't care, you know. It's like, I'm just going to the store, you know, so, but if the female spouse is going with them, it causes some embarrassment to the woman. I have a friend that's going through that now, and she has told me, I have told them so many times, I don't know what to do, but I have to go with him because he has problems driving. So I don't dare let him go by himself. And she has tried to correct him and this and that. She says, I even pray about it every day, but nothing changes. So can you comment on that, or what else she can do besides praying?
When we started dating, hygiene, being attractive, was so important because we wanted to brush our teeth and make sure we didn't smell, and we did all these extra steps. And I think what happens is we get comfortable, we get lazy, we just settle into these relationships, and we say, well, it is what it is. You know, I did my best. If she likes me, she likes me. If she doesn't, she doesn't. I'm kind of tired. Because I may have been known to go to Home Depot looking homeless. And that hurts my wife's attractiveness to me because I don't care. Because I really don't care. And so I need to care. And I think that's what's happening with these men, is they genuinely don't care. Because when we were in middle school, when we were in high school, we wouldn't be caught dead looking homeless, right? Because we want to dress up. And if I've been mowing the yard and I need something, I'll just get my truck and go, right? Because I don't care. You know, I got grass on my leg. You know, I don't care. And I think that's, to me, what the heart of it is I want him willing to be coachable, to be accountable, and to find out what is the dress, right? So we're not wearing shorts to a wedding, right? Or we're embarrassing ourselves at a church event, right? And we need to look for, and that's something me and my wife have kind of decided on. One of our rules is, if you care about what I'm going to wear, then you probably need to go ahead and lay it out on the bed. And that doesn't make me a child, but if she knows we're going to a tie event, then she needs to lay out a suit and a tie on the bed. And that doesn't make her my mom. It may make her feel like my mom, but she really cares about what I wear, remember? And I don't. And I wish I did, but I really don't care what I wear. So when I get out of the shower, there's my clothes, and I know exactly what the drill is. And that's probably what I want from this man, is I want him to attune. I want him to listen to his wife and love her more because he's embarrassing her. That's probably what's happening. And there's an attraction problem happening because we just do this. We just no longer care that we ate onions. We no longer care that we didn't brush our teeth. And that's an attraction problem. And then these men will come talk to me and say, you know, she won't spend time with me. She won't hug me. She won't go walk on the beach with me. And I'm like, well, remember that time you told her you didn't care? This is where this shows up. Because I know most men, they want a woman that's warm and inviting and wanting to be with us. And that's where as men, we can't get lazy. We can't get lax and decide that we've decided we no longer care. We're going to wear, you know, shirts from the 90s or shirts from the 2000s that no longer fit or have, you know, stains in them that are embarrassing. And so I think that that's what's ironic is when you meet children, they care too much. And when you deal with older people, wise people, they will tell you, we don't care enough. We need to actually work on caring more. Because it makes you an odd person in our society. Because everyone else is, looked in the mirror before they left, right? So it's not asking too much for us to just kind of care, just a little bit, right? Great question. It's not mundane.
Everyone there, do you all hear?
I tell you what, my wife has no problem with that. She won't even say, "Are you going out like that?" No, she will clearly say, "You are not going out." It's not even a question. So my next question, when a couple, let's say they agree on most things, they are in agreement. All the main things, main issues, they are in agreement. But there are a few little things where they do not agree. And almost invariably, things will go either his way or they're always going her way. Considering that they're in agreement on most things, should this issue even be brought up, or is it best to be left alone?
I don't know if I've ever met a couple that agrees on everything. In fact, I find someone's being trampled, someone's being a doormat if they have zero conflict. So we generally say conflict is a sign of intimacy. Yes, there are petty things that don't matter. Because like on a 1 to 10, do you really care that much where the TV goes or what color the carpet is? Because some people are like really passionate. I don't want a pink living room, right? But if we're talking about, 14 greens, most fellas I know are like, I like them all, I mean, if you want me to pick, I can. But there are political issues that come up. There are religious issues that come up of people that are different faiths, people that may agree with the pastor or disagree with the pastor or the priest, whoever's speaking. We're never going to see God the same way. I wish we could. I wish we all had this perfect vision of God. But I find we're looking for a different type of God. He's the same being, but I think we all are looking for something different. So there's always going to be agreements and disagreements. They're going to be our passionate people, our strong personalities that are drawn to other strong personalities, and you'll find passive people are drawn to other passive people that are maybe quieter or don't need to speak everything they think. And so there is going to be conflict in marriage. That is guaranteed. In fact, that's, once again, I'm going to say it again, that's a sign of intimacy. That's a sign that we're growing together, we're getting to know each other. But when it comes to the death penalty or abortion or all these things, there are some things that we can go to the scriptures and say, okay, now hang on. There are some things we need to be passionate about. There are some things we need to agree on because this is what we believe the Word of God says. So there is truth. I'm not saying it's all perspective, but does it really matter? Is it that big of a deal? And so if she wants to buy the thing and it's not that big of a deal and it didn't cost that much money, I don't want us to pick every anthill and fight over these petty things that really don't matter. And once again, if her political views are different than mine, okay. Is it really that big of a deal? Is it really worth it? Do I need to tell her to be my wife, you need to vote with me politically, you need to agree with everything I say? And I think that turns into a slavery, that turns into servanthood. And that is not the submission, that's not the sacrifice I want from a couple.
Okay, thank you. In other words, kind of pick your battles.
Pick your battles.
Yeah, makes sense. I think that was it on our questions. I don't know if y'all had any others.
I was just wondering if anybody in attendance has questions. Yeah. I feel like I'm watching the Christian version of The View. Because believe it or not, none of this was rehearsed. So I'm just sitting here in awe at, the great questions that y'all came up with, the great answers that both of y'all came up with. And I was just wondering if anybody here had anything that they wanted to contribute to this or ask? Okay, well. Okay.
In my experience, I think that the three more important things in a marriage, besides love, obviously, is respect and trust. I mean, if you don't respect each other, if you don't trust each other, the marriage goes down. I mean, respect is so important and trust is so important. Like, for example, my husband can go anywhere or be anywhere, and I don't question him, you know. I mean, I trust him completely. If I, if I couldn't trust him, or if he came home late, you know, and I start questioning him, where were you? I mean, why didn't you call me? What happened? You know, I mean, I don't think we could live like that. And same thing with me, you know. I mean, he might question me, what happened? I mean, why are you late? You know, but it would be out of worry, not out of suspicion or anything like that. So I think that those three things are just mandatory for a marriage to survive.
Yes, they are.
Okay, Virginia, you couldn't have ended it better. So, Monsignor, I will just let you dismiss us.
I don't have a question, but one of the things that I get to do as a priest and pastor is prepare couples for marriage. And one of the things that I tell them at the beginning of the marriage preparation is, I'll tell them that this preparation is not for me, this preparation is for you. You're going to make an assessment about yourself, and you're going to make an assessment about the person that you're choosing to marry. And so at the end of this process, you're going to decide one of three things. Yes, we should get married. Yes, we should get married, but we need a little more time. You know, we have no business trying to get hitched. Okay, but you will come to that insight as a result of this, because you're making an honest assessment about yourself and your ability to give yourself as gift to this other person, and you're making an honest assessment about this other person and their ability to give the gift of themselves to you. So that's one of the things we do. The second thing that I do in the marriage preparation is I tell the couple, never, ever stop dating. You know, so you can't use an excuse, well, you know, I work. Well, you were working when y'all were dating, and y'all still got together. Well, you know, I got all of these projects. You had all of those projects before y'all got married. That's not an excuse. Well, we got kids. Well, so that means that's why you have parents, in-laws, siblings, and cousins, so that you can pawn those kids off on these other people twice a week so that you have time with each other. Never, ever stop. So there was a bunch of things that you all raised, and I was just saying, oh, yes, oh, I'm loving it. So, yeah, it was good.
Can I make a comment regarding that, what you just said? And this is something that might interest some couples, I don't know, but I want to share something about our own experience. Even after we got married, we invented something that we call the WW, the Wonderful Wednesday. And it was like this. Every Wednesday we went out, and we alternated on Wednesday. She would pick where we were going, what we were going to do. It was secret, it was a surprise. And she would only tell me, well, you can wear blue jeans and that's it. Or please dress up, that's it. And I did the same thing. And we did so many different things that were all surprising. One time she took me bowling. I had no idea she was a champion bowler there in her time. And I looked like a fool, but anyway, that was her plan, you know? And anyway, we, we had to invent this, get creative. Every Wednesday, it was something, it was the highlight of the week. Because from Tuesday, I was there looking in the paper, see what's available, what was going on in town. Because I wanted my Wednesday to beat her Wednesday, you see? And so it's something that worked for a long, long time. We were, unfortunately, eventually we had to stop that because I had to move, we had to move a little bit out of town. And then, you know, we only met on weekends while I was working out. And but we were always dating. So it is important to keep on. I'm glad you brought it up, Monsignor.
Never, ever stop dating. The last thing I tell a couple is, remember, do not marry a HUD home. And if you're familiar with HUD homes, these are low-cost homes that the government sells, but what? they need to be repaired. If you need to fix her, don't marry her. She's not a HUD home. The renovation project is not going to go well. If you need to fix him, do not marry him. It's not going to go well. Do not marry a HUD home. When you say I do, you're saying I do to the person as they are and not as you intend to rebuild them in your image and likeness. So it was just great stuff. So Ross and Jennifer, thank you all for being with us tonight and sharing these wonderful things that help build healthy Christian marriages. So you all join me in thanking them, please. Did either one of you want to make any final comments, or you're good?
It's been wonderful. Thank you for having me tonight. I hope you learned something. I beg of you, if you need help, we have probably 200 counselors in this city that are qualified, great people. If you prefer a woman, if you prefer a man, a lot of us are Christian. I beg you, get the help. Please don't wait. Premarital counseling, whatever you need. Because I don't want a couple that waits too long. Because unfortunately in the South, a lot of people will come right before it's over, or actually once they've hired an attorney, just to say we went to counseling. And so it's over. And so that's very sad for us, because we wish we could have saved something, but you had to bring something to save. And unfortunately, I deal with couples that are separated or divorcing or plan to divorce. It's already over, but I worry they're checking a box. And I beg you, if there's something to work on, please get that work.
Thank you all. whoever